Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another lesson in Algebra 1. Today's lesson is Unit 2, Lesson 2. We are going to continue writing and solving inequalities. The last lesson was looking at 1 and 2-step inequalities, and now we're going to bump it up and we're going to take it to multiple steps. So the basic steps are going to be the same. They're just going to be a little bit more complicated. So our objectives today are, as I know how to simplify and solve inequalities with multiple steps. Again, realizing you need to flip the sign of the inequality when multiplying or dividing by a negative. And I even gave you a little thing over here to remember, flip the sign when multiplying or dividing by a negative. And then when it's time to graph, you need to know when to use an open or closed circle and which way to draw the arrow. Alrighty, so let's get to it. Let's write down these notes. So the steps to solve a multi-step inequality, the first thing that you're going to do is we need to simplify both sides of the inequality sign. And the first part that you're going to do with simplification of that is we need to distribute. So if you see parentheses, you need to distribute. The second part is going to be once you have done distribution, if there is distribution present, you need to combine like terms on each side of the inequality sign. And so once we've gotten everything broken down on both the left side and the right side of our inequality sign, we can move to the next part. So the next part is we're going to either add or subtract to remove the constant. And so to remind you, the constant is just the number without a variable, so without a letter. We're working on, the next part of this is to get all the numbers together that don't have a variable. And when I say add or subtract, it sounds imprecise, but it's following the rules of how you manipulate equations and inequalities. And so I'll point that out when we get to solving. The third step is that we're either going to multiply or divide to remove the coefficient of the variable. And so again, we're choosing the opposite function to undo that portion, and I'll show you that when we get to solving problems. But it's very similar to what you did in solving equations. We're just doing it with inequalities. Alrighty, so there's a little note here. You need to flip the inequality when you multiply or divide with a negative. Alrighty, and then you're going to end up graphing. So we've got to graph with either an open circle, and you'll use the open circle when you see either, a less than sign or a greater than sign. There's no equal bar in it, so it's an open circle. Or you're going to use a closed circle when you have the equal sign in it. And the reason that you use the closed circle when the equal sign is it means the solution exactly includes that point. If it's an open circle when there's no equal sign in it, it just means that the solution is going to be a number up to very, 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 very close to that point. And I'll show you what I mean when we're solving it. And then I'm going to just go ahead and add a little bit of 5 here. You're going to, draw arrow in the direction of the solution. Alrighty. So if I am going too fast, of course, just pause it because I'm recording this ahead of time. Okay, so let's look at example 1. And so I'm just going to kind of survey this, and I see that I do have some parentheses so that I know I'm going to have some distribution to start off with. So let me just go ahead and rewrite my equation. The reason that I rewrite, or I should say my inequality, the reason that I rewrite my work every time is because it's giving me a chance to survey everything and to kind of see every component of it. So it is an organizational strategy that I personally use and I think is helpful to use. Okay, my left-hand side I can leave alone for right now. My right side, I need to deal with the distributive property. So 3 times 4 is 12, and 3 times -2 is -6. All right, so we have done the distributive property. Boom, we can kind of check that off. The next thing is we're going to combine like terms. So let me survey this and see what I see for like terms. Well, there's nothing over here that I can combine together, but I can combine this 12 minus 6, and that's what I'm going to do next. So 12 minus 6, I can combine. So I'm just going to write this 4 minus x over again, and then 12 minus 6 is going to be 6. All right, so I have done the combine like terms. Now we're on to step 2, where it says to add or subtract to remove the constant. And remember, the constant is the number without a variable. Okay, so this, I wouldn't move that because we have 2 things over here. So we're looking at where we have, 2 things that we need to break down more. I'm going to leave this variable alone, but I am going to address this 4. That would be the constant. Now this 4 is a positive 4. The reason I know it's positive 4 is because I don't see a negative there. I only see 4. So to move it to the other side, I've got to subtract it. And I need to do both sides the same. So I'm going to subtract this side as well. Okay, so that cancels. That's going to give me negative x is greater than 6 minus 4 is 2. Okay, I ran out of room, so I'm just going to rewrite this over again. So negative x is greater than 2. All right, there is a negative in front of my x. And so when I look up here and it says add or subtract, okay, we did that. We're going to multiply or divide to remove the coefficient of the variable. Well, this negative, it's in front of that. And so that means multiply. So it's saying -1 times x is what it's saying. So the opposite function of -1 times x would be to divide by -1. And that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to divide by -1 on both sides. But, little warning symbol, when you multiply or divide with a negative, you've got to flip the inequality. So this negative sign here means I'm going to address that inequality. So let me do that real fast. That negative divided by negative, that cancels. So I get x. I'm going to flip my inequality. 2 divided by -1 is -2. Alrighty, we have our answer. So we got to figure out how to graph this. So let's look back up here real fast. If it's this symbol or this symbol, we're going to have an open circle. And you can see it is the less than symbol. So I am going to come down here and I'm going to put an open circle in -2. I'm going to go ahead and fill out more numbers. So I got -2, -1, 0, -3, and -4. So this is, of course, a number line. So it's going to be getting larger. It's going to get larger going to the right, and it's going to get smaller going to the left. We got to decide which way to do our arrow. This is saying x is smaller than -2. The smaller direction is going to be to the left. Okay. I wish it wouldn't do that. It does that, like it thinks that I'm trying to undo it by going over it several times, and I'm like, no, I want to keep it. Let's see if I can do a little thicker there. Maybe the thicker will help me. There we go. Okay, so it's going to the left. I want to point out something here that this can give us a little bit of a hint. It looks like it's pointing to the left to help us to do that. Um, and that little trick only works if your variable is on the left hand side. Sometimes you end up with your variable on the right hand side, and then you have to pancake flip it if that happens. Okay, I'm going to take a little side journey here, and I'm going to show you how we can test this and see if we've shaded the correct direction. Okay, so I'm going to have to write over here because I don't have enough room. I know it's okay if you don't write it in your notes. You can write it somewhere else, or you can just watch as I go along. But if I want to test a point, the easiest point to test is 0, in my humble opinion, because 0 is going to make whatever that part is cancel out. So I'm going to say, x equals 0. I'm going to go get my inequality again, and I'm going to write it out. And I'm going to have to erase this here in a second because, for me to go on to the next problem, I'm going to have to clear this off of here. But I just want to show you how to test a point. Okay, so I have just said that x is 0. Anywhere I see x, I'm going to drop a 0. Okay, I only see x one time there. So I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to do 4 minus 0 is greater than 3, 4 times, or minus negative 2. 4 minus 0 is 4, greater than 4 minus 2 is 2, times 3 is 6. And I end up with this weird statement here. This is a false statement, okay? Because this is a false statement, I know 0 is not a solution. Because 0 is not a solution, you do not shade to 0. Okay, like you're not going to include 0 in that. And if you look over here, I did not shade the part where 0 is. I shaded away from that. So I did good. Yay. Okay. So even though this came up with a false statement, that's okay because this is just telling us, like, the true false part of this is just telling us which way to shade. My 0 is not a solution. I'm not going to shade towards 0. Alrighty. I'm going to erase that, but that is just showing you how you can test points, which some problems they do ask you to test if this is a solution or not. And so if it's not a solution, it makes a false statement. If it is a solution, it makes a true statement. Let's look at this next problem. I'm going to just inspect it, visually inspect it. I see 3 times j plus 41 is less than or equal to 36. And so I am going to rewrite this because it gives me a chance to just look at things. It's all about getting the brain organized and ready to solve problems. All right, so when I see parentheses, I'm going to look up here and it says distribute when there's parentheses. Okay, I can do that. So I'm going to take the 3 times j and 3 times 41. So 3 times j plus 3 times 41, and 3 times 41 is going to give me 123. And if you had to use your calculator for that, it's no big deal. You're in algebra, you're allowed to use a calculator. Okay. So I did this part where I distributed. I'm going to look and see if I need to combine any like terms on each side of the inequality sign. I look on this side and I can't combine these. This one has a j and this one is just a number by itself. And then there's nothing over here to combine this one with. So this one, I don't have to do this because there's nothing to combine. I can move to this one where it says add or subtract to remove the constant. That's the number without a variable. So let's look. I have my variable here, but this number has no variable. I need to get it over here with this number that has no variable. So how I do that is I see it's a plus 123. I'm going to subtract it. Oops. It would help if I didn't write weird stuff. Let's try that again. I'm going to subtract. Oops. I'm just not me if I'm not doing this once at least every lesson. Okay, so I'm going to subtract 123 from both sides. And if I need to, I'm going to grab my calculator because, again, I can. And Desmos is an awesome online calculator. Okay, so 36 minus 123, that is going to give me negative 87. I can go ahead and just write this up here again to give myself a little bit of room. Okay, so if I see, okay, so I did this part. Let me back up. I did this part where I added or subtracted. And so now I've got just my variable and a number in front. So I'm either going to multiply or divide to remove that. Well, when I see 3 next to j, that means multiply. So the opposite of multiplication is going to be division. So I am going to divide by 3 on both sides. And I get j is less than or equal to negative 87 divided by 3 is negative 29. I do want to point out something here. Just because it has a negative over here on this number does not mean we flip the sign. The only time that we flip the sign is when the negative is with the variable, like this. It was negative x, and we divided by a negative, so that meant we had to flip the sign from this to this. This was a positive number, so when we divided by that, a positive number, we didn't have to flip. We could leave it alone. Let's go graph this. Okay, so this symbol here, the less than or equal, it's right here. We're going to use a closed circle. Let me see. I'm going to make a bigger. There we go. I'm going to use a closed circle. And I am looking for numbers. Whoops, I need to write out the numbers. I got negative 29, negative 28, and negative 27. So remember, my numbers are getting larger in this direction and smaller in this direction. So negative 30, negative 31. Okay, so where is it that j is less than or equal to negative 29? And it's going to be this way. You can look at this and realize it looks like it's pointing in this direction, but you need to understand the math reason. We are looking to see what numbers are less than or equal to 29. Okay, so negative 30 is less than negative 29. That's why we shade that way. I'm not going to do a test point. I don't have enough room over here, but I do want to make sure you understand the math of why it is this way. And I want to again point out, we have our variable on the left-hand side, and that lets us use this kind of shortcut where it looks like which direction it's pointing. We're going to get to one where that isn't the case, and I'll have to show you what to do. Okay, let's look at this next one. We have this here. I want you to see your variable is on the right of the inequality. We're going to need to look at this just a little bit differently. Now, when I see it on the right-hand side, you know what I can do? If I see it on the right-hand side and the left-hand side doesn't have a variable on it, I can just pancake flip this right away if I wanted to. Okay, so I can, whoops, I forgot that I had that big ink. I could pancake flip this right away. But I want to show you something in the process. So I'm just noting this, that we're going to have to pancake flip a little bit later on. And let me show you why. Okay, so let's get busy solving this. I'm going to write this over again. Less than or equal to negative 6a plus 2. Okay, so I see my parentheses, so I know I need to distribute. So I have 6 is less than or equal to negative 6 times a. So negative 6a. Negative 6 times a positive 2 is negative 12. So the next step I have is I need to get all my numbers without variables over to with the 6. So this is minus 12. So I'm going to add 12 to it. and add 12 to this side because I'm treating both sides the same. Negative 12 plus 12 cancels out. So I got negative 6a is, we got this inequality, and then we got 6 plus 12 is 18. So I want you to notice that we have a little warning symbol here. We have a negative right there. That means we're going to have to flip this inequality sign when we go to divide by that negative. So I am going to divide by negative 6 and divide by negative 6. This cancels. Let me go ahead and write it up here. So 18 divided by negative 6 is going to give me negative 3. Because I divided by a negative, I have to flip my symbol. And so this is my answer. Now, when I go to graph this, so we've got negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, negative 4, and negative 5. And I have, the equal sign in it, so I know that I need to put a dot right here. You are going to want, don't write this down, your brain is going to want to be like, oh, look, the way that it's pointing, I'm going to shade it this way. That's what we should do. And so you're going to want to do this. Okay. This is wrong. Okay. Wrong. Let me show you why. If I pick, so on this side, negative 1 would be a solution. The next one would be 0. I'm just going to pick 0. This would include 0. Let's go back and test this. And you don't have to write this down. I'm just trying to prove a point here. So I am going to test 0. And so I'm going to take this equation, or this inequality. I got 6 is less than negative 6a plus 2. I am going to plug in this 0 anywhere I see a variable. So 6 is less than or equal to negative 6, 0 plus 2. Well, that 0 plus 2, that is 2. So 2 times negative 6 is negative 12. And so you end up with this weird statement. 6 is less than or equal to negative 12. That is false. That is not an accurate statement, which means 0 is not a solution. And you're like, but wait a minute. If I look at this, it looks like I should be shading in this direction. And I shaded in this direction. But I found out that 0 was not a solution. That's an issue. Okay, the reason that I try to teach you why the way you shade, is because of this. If you end up with your variable on the right-hand side, it looks like it should be shaded this way. We're going to need to pancake flip that to have that on the left side, and then it will look like it's shading the right way. So let's see, we're going to pancake flip this. We got a, and the greater than is pointing to the negative 3. And so now you can see that little hint here is shading this way. So why is that? Look at this. Negative 3 is greater than a. So a would have to be anything smaller than negative 3, which would be this way, okay? But we picked the way of it being bigger. And so I know I talked a lot, and I hope I didn't, go on and on too much about that. But I wanted to show that you do need to mathematically understand about why the direction is the way we shade, and don't just get accustomed to looking at the inequality itself. But if you do end up with the inequality on the right side, you can pancake flip it over. And, this and this are equivalent. Now, you can pancake flip it at the outset. Like you see it's on one side here. You could pancake flip this whole thing and then, just move on to. So that is a solution. Okay. Hope that makes sense on that one. Okay, I'm going to visually inspect my next problem, my example 4, and look, I have no parentheses. Yay! So that is a cause for celebration. We don't have to do the distributive property, but we are going to group like terms. Whoops. Make that back to a thinner one. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite this so I can visually inspect this problem. And I'm going to look for my like terms. And when I look at this one, I can see negative 6c and 2c. Those are like terms, so I can group those. So I'm going to rewrite my negative 30 because it's over there by itself. Negative 6c plus 2c is going to give me negative 4c plus 2. I'm going to get the number without a variable and move it to the right. So I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. Negative 30 minus 2 is negative 32. Negative 4c. And so when I write that negative 4c, I want you to immediately think, oh, we got to pay attention. It's got a negative. That means that we're going to flip the sign. Okay. So we're going to divide by negative 4. Divide by negative 4. So I can carry my work over here. Negative 32 divided by negative 4 is going to give me positive 8. I'm going to flip that inequality. Goes this way. Alrighty. This is my answer. Now remember, if I come down here and graph this, and I do 8, 9, 10, and 7, and 6, and I've got my open circle because it doesn't have the equal sign in it, I need to know that I am shading in a way that C is larger than 8. Okay, going to the right, that is my larger way, right? So going this way, that is my correct way to shade this. But it looks like it should be pointing this way. Okay, so you can, if it makes you happy, you can pancake flip this. If you want to, make sure that, I don't know, it just makes you feel better, you can pancake flip this and turn it that way. And then it looks like it's pointing the way that you wanted it to go. Do not forget you can test points. So if 0 is on, it's down here, right? Or we could test 10. 10 would be an easy number to test. I can come over here and I can just test this real fast. I got negative 30 is greater than negative 6 times 0. So we know that's just going to drop out. And that's going to drop out because it's 2 times 0. That's why picking 0 is like the easiest thing. And then you end up with this crazy situation where it says negative 30 is greater than 2. That is a false statement. Okay. So that's wrong. 0 cannot be a solution. So that's why I'm shading away from 0. All right. So I hope that helps explain with that one. Okay, let's look at this next one. We've got ourselves a decimal. And I see that I'm going to have a thing that I need to distribute. So let's write this down. We have 18 minus 4.5 times 2b minus 6. It's greater than or equal to negative 9. So I see my first thing I need to do is address my parentheses. So I'm going to distribute. So I'm just going to go ahead and write that 18 over again. Minus 4.5 times 2. That is going to give me negative 9b. And if I get anxious about the multiplying in my head, I'm going to grab my calculator. Okay, so that's no big thing. We can do that. Negative 4.5 times negative 6. That is going to give me, we can grab our calculator. Let's say we get anxious about this and we're like, I don't know, I just want to make sure. It's okay. Negative 4.5 times negative 6. And that gives me 27. All right, so let's write down 27. So negative times negative is it's that positive 27, greater than or equal to negative 9. So now we're going to group our like terms. And when I look at this, I see that I have an 18 and a 27 in common. Okay, so my 18 plus 27 is going to give me 45 minus 9b is greater than or equal to negative 9. Okay, so I need to get the number without the variable away from the variable. So I'm trying to get that variable by itself. So I'm going to subtract 45 from both sides. I get negative 9b is greater than or equal to negative 54. And then I need to realize, oh, I got a negative here. Okay, so I'm going to have to flip my sign. So I'm going to divide by negative 9 and divide by negative 9. So if I continue this up here, I get b is less than or equal to negative 54 divided by negative 9 is going to give me positive 6. Now, I can test a point if I wanted to, and the easiest point, would be 0 to make sure that I'm shading the right way. So I'm going to put my colored in dot there since it's got the equal sign, and I'm going to shade it to where b is less than, because that's what it's saying is b is less than or equal to 6. Okay. Let me just take a second to point out a difference here. A colored in circle means it can exactly equal 6, but if we look at this cannot exactly equal 8. It can equal 8.000001, so it could be almost 8, but it cannot equal 8 exactly. When it's colored in, it means that it can equal that number exactly. Okay, so the most complicated one for last, we're going to tackle these parentheses first. So we've got 8, oops, every time, guys, every time. We're going to do 8y, and I'm going to write down this so I can just look it over and pay close attention to everything that's included in there. So write that 8y over again. I'm going to distribute minus 3 times 2y is going to give me negative 6y. Negative 3 times negative 4 is going to give me positive 12. And then carry down my plus 5 is less than 17. I'm going to look at this and I'm going to group my like terms. I can see I have several things over here, so I know that I need to group them together. My y's, I can group together. My numbers without a y, I can group those together. And so that's what I'm going to do. 8y minus 6y is going to give me 2y plus 12 plus 5 is 17. And we're going to end up with an interesting situation here where when we subtract 17 from both sides, sometimes students, this will give them pause and they're like, oh my gosh, what happened? We got 2y and 0, and was that an error? It's not an error. It's not an error. It's okay. So if we were to divide that by 2, and we grab our calculator because we're all anxious. We're like, I don't even know what's going on with these zeros. The zeros just, make me anxious. So I put in 0 divided by 2. Oh, it's 0. Okay. So this is telling me my answer is y is less than 0. And remember, 0 is just another number. Like it's nothing any special about it. So we can put it on this number line and we can put a dot at 0. It's no big deal. So this is an open circle. So I'm going to put my open circle and it needs to be less than 0. So I'm shading in the less than direction. And there you go. Alrighty, guys. I hope that helps. Until next time. Bye.